the big news of the weekend, if you will, and the big news since we last spoke is, of course, the Conor McGregor news. This all broke on Friday, and I do have to give a special shout out to Petesy Carroll, to Ben Folks, to Chuck Mindenhall, who jumped on live. The Crack is live now. They jumped on the Crack literally an hour after a verdict was reached and announced. And that's not easy. It's not easy talking about this. It's easy to react to fight news an hour after, or a press conference, or a fight. But it's not easy to react to something that is this heavy and sensitive an hour later, especially when we're not legal experts and this is not our domain. But obviously, it's a gigantic news story because it is, it is about the biggest star in the history of the sport. And so I do want to give them a shout out. And if you want to watch their conversation, which was an hour on this and the aftermath and comparing it to Mike Tyson back in the day, I do think it's really worth your time. And that's up on the YouTube channel and on our podcast feed. I want to read the article that PT wrote on uncrown.com because, again, I don't want to get any of the verbiage wrong. This was a civil case. And so because it's a civil case and not a criminal case, there's just stuff that I'm not well versed in. But this is the actual information that came out Friday afternoon, Friday evening in Dublin. Conor McGregor has lost to his sexual assault civil case in Dublin. A high court jury awarded damages of $248,603.60, which equates to about $259,149.36 to Nikita Hand. That was the woman, the Irish woman who was accusing him of sexually assaulting her against McGregor on Friday after ruling that she was sexually assaulted by the former UFC champion in a Dublin hotel in December of 2018. Hand, 35 years of age, claimed she was raped by McGregor and another man named James Lawrence in a penthouse suite at the Beacon Hotel, which is in Dublin. The jury found that Lawrence did not assault Hand. Damages of €188,603 were awarded, and that's euro, were awarded to Hand, with an additional €60,000 also added, making it a total of $248,603.60. McGregor was accompanied to the court by fiancée Dee Devlin, with whom he has 4 children, for the first time during the trial's 2-week proceedings. To hear the jury's decision on Friday, several of McGregor's family members were also present at the high court. Reports from the court state that the jury took 6 hours and 10 minutes to come to their decision. Leaving the court at approximately 5 p.m. local time, McGregor declined to make a comment as he was swarmed by the waiting media. He has since tweeted. I will get to that in a moment. The case was a civil case, not a criminal case, meaning the assault is deemed a civil wrong and therefore the plaintiff is entitled to compensation. However, McGregor will not face criminal sanctions. Hand was forced to move after her property was reportedly invaded in June by a group of masked men wearing balaclavas and wielding weapons. Multiple Irish national outlets reported Friday in the aftermath of proceedings at Dublin's High Court. The men also stabbed Hand's partner and broke the front windows of her house, according to the reports. Outside the court, following Friday's verdict, Hand gave a statement to media thanking her legal team, the Rape Crisis Center, her family, and friends. So the rest of the article you can read. It's quite lengthy, and I do suggest that you read all the coverage on uncrown.com. But those are the nuts and bolts. Almost, 30 or 40 minutes after this news broke, Conor McGregor did tweet that he is planning on appealing the verdict. I will be appealing today's decision, he wrote. The judge's instruction and the modest award given was for assault, not for aggravated or exemplary damages. I am disappointed that the jury did not hear all the evidence that the DPP reviewed. I'm with my family now, focused on my future. Thank you to all my support worldwide. I did reach out to Conor's team and ask them if they were in fact going to move forward with the appeal, because I noticed that tweet had since been taken down, deleted, but I have not heard back yet. Based on the stuff that I've read and listened to, and there's been a lot of, I think, fair and balanced coverage coming out of Ireland from all the national media, he does have 28 days to file an appeal. So the clock is somewhat ticking. That's 4 weeks, and that would be, around the end of December. He did tweet a couple more times regarding the verdict. This one is a lengthy one, which I also do believe was taken down in the aftermath. At the very end, he wrote, "This is not a court of hard evidence and truth. It is a kangaroo court of opinions and feelings. We are not done yet, not by a long shot. No chance. On we fight. Justice and truth will prevail. Appeal, 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 as well as other. Congrats, James. Onwards and upwards." That is James Lawrence that he's referring to, his friend who was also accused, but deemed not civilly liable in the verdict. I think that was the only tweet, the only other tweet from him. Was there another one? Am I wrong? There was one more, okay, I'm being told, and I think that one was eventually also taken down. He retweeted an RTE news story saying falsely accused a man of rape and loss. Justice was served for James Lawrence. Yes, deplorable what they done. Nikita Hand, vicious liar, appeal. So it sounds like he wants to appeal, unless someone has told him since not to do that or not to talk about it anymore. Who knows? We did see today, so you wonder about like the trickle-down effect here, right? Because obviously, since it's a civil case, there's no criminal charges, but you know, it's not just the money that he's being told to pay Nikita Hand. It's also what could come from a business standpoint. And one of his business partners, the game Hitman, released this statement on Twitter this morning. It's a game that apparently Conor is a downloadable character in light of the recent court ruling regarding Conor McGregor. IO Interactive, which is the producer of the game, has made the decision to cease its collaboration with the athlete effective immediately. We take this matter very seriously and cannot ignore its implications. Consequently, we will begin removing all content featuring Mr. McGregor from our storefronts starting today. And so that would be, I would say, the first and probably the biggest, at least as of now, domino to fall since Friday. I mean, all of this happened Friday evening. It's now around the same time Monday, so not a ton has happened in terms of news pertaining to this because it was the weekend. But I did want to bring in our own Petesy Carroll to talk more about this because it just so happens that he lives in Dublin and all of this transpired just several kilometers from where he lives. And so he certainly has his finger on the pulse and has been able to read and see all the reaction and obviously talk to everyone back home about what is going down and where Conor goes from here. And so first, as far as the nuts and bolts, Petesy, and again, well done to you and Ben and Chuck on Monday, immediately reacting to all of this. Did I miss anything that was glaring? Did I miss an important detail in all of this? Oh, you are muted. You have to unmute yourself, Petesy. I heard Frank lambasting you for not muting yourself before the show, and here it has come to roost. Apparently,
it's tough.
Yeah, it has come to roost. So let me know when you do unmute yourself. Is he unmuted?
Stand by for us.
It's just a quick little button there, right? We'll reconnect with him.
Yeah, I'm going to reconnect with him, please.
All right, working through the kinks. It's that new microphone, isn't it?
He's on the old one.
He went back to the old one.
Yeah.
But it's a new camera?
It's a new camera, but I'm going to talk to him real quick.
All right. This is what Nikita said outside of the courthouse. I want to thank my daughter Freya. She has given me so much strength and courage over the last 6 years throughout this nightmare to keep pushing forward for justice. I want to show Freya and every other girl and boy that you can stand up for yourself if something happens to you, no matter who the person is, and justice will be served. To all the victims of sexual assault, I hope my story is a reminder that no matter how afraid you might be, speak up, you have a voice, and keep on fighting for justice. I know this has not only impacted my life, but my daughters, my family, and friends tremendously. It is something that I will never forget for the rest of my life. Now that justice has been served, I can now try and move on and look forward to the future with my family and friends. So that was part of her statement immediately afterwards outside of the courtroom. Like I said, Conor didn't speak to media. There were a ton of people surrounding him. But he did go on X immediately afterwards. We have not seen Conor fight since July of 2021. Of course, he was supposed to come back in June of this past year, didn't fight. And Dana White saying recently that the plan is for him to fight in the back end of 2025. I did ask Petesy a few times when he was on the show talking about this, like how much is she asking for? What are they seeking in terms of monetary damages? And did find out in the aftermath that it was approximately 1.7 million euro. I do believe 1 million for damages and 700,000 for the moving houses, because as I was talking about earlier, there was the incident at her home. And so in the end, she did not get that. In the end, it was a little more than 248,000. So a big difference. But she did also say that this wasn't about the money for her. So we will see, we'll see what happens if in fact Conor does appeal, this gets dragged out. And who knows how long it will actually last, because this is an incident that happened in December of 2018, and we're only now reaching this point 6 years later. Do we have Petesy? What is going on?
Negative.
We do not have him.
Yeah, we'll get him in just 30 seconds.
Okay. So that is the nuts and bolts of it all. Like I said, a lot of people have done a great job of covering this case, and you've seen a bunch of it on social media. I've seen a bunch of it on podcasts and YouTube and whatnot. And there's no other way to slice it. It's a very upsetting and disturbing development as far as the story of Conor McGregor goes. And you do wonder how this will affect his future. Now, it comes about 7 days after Mike Tyson was fighting on Netflix and celebrated and has turned into Uncle Mike and beloved. And he is someone who actually went to jail and was accused and convicted of rape. And look how far he has come in 30 years. Not to suggest that the same thing is going to happen and that the two cases are exactly the same. They are not, but the timing is interesting, if nothing else. It is amazing, as someone who grew up in the 90s and was well aware of Mike Tyson. I remember when he was brought in. I remember the handcuffed, shot of him. I remember all of this stuff. It is amazing to see how far he's come in about 30 years. It's really incredible. And so we see what happened to him, and obviously with Conor, he is vowing to fight back, and I see that there is support for that, and people saying that he wasn't given a fair shot. So it continues to develop, and we continue to monitor it. I do believe that we have Petesy now. We try this again. Petesy, you there?
I am indeed. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, wonderful. Working through the kinks. You just have to press that microphone with the line through it.
Listen, let's not get into it, mate. All right? Let's not get into it.
Well, I don't know if you heard my initial question when you came in. Did I miss anything in talking about all this? And I've said some more stuff since you left, but in general, do you think that I missed any pertinent details?
I would say the only thing that I think we should point out is that Nikita Hand, when this information came out about her house being under attack, in no way did Nikita Hand's legal team suggest that McGregor had any involvement with that. What their argument was that McGregor's support is so fierce in Ireland that some of the supporters may have been driven to do this off their own initiative. That's the only thing I noticed.
Okay, that is a great point. Thank you for bringing that up. And so, what new? I read your article that you posted on Friday. You guys spoke on Friday. What's the temperature been? Anything new since then? As of right now, we don't know if he is in fact going to appeal, right? I said I reached out to his legal team, didn't hear back, and those tweets have been taken down. I don't know if that's a suggestion that he's not going to. That happens quite often with Conor, with all sorts of things, fight-related, benign things. But what new, if anything, has happened since Friday's verdict?
Well, apart from the story about her home being broken into, the story really on the Sunday papers, as you know, they kind of wrap up the week. There's a lot more opinion involved in them. There was a lot of praise for the bravery of Nikita Hand. Like we even saw the Taoiseach, like our equivalent of a prime minister, coming out and commend her for going through this process at an incredible risk to herself, given that, they've waived anonymity basically by going to the civil court. As McGregor retweeted himself, the Minister for Justice also came out and commended her. There is an awful lot of talk about the bravery. There's huge public support for Nikita Hand, the person who accused both Conor and James Lawrence of sexual assault in December 2018. You mentioned the Hitman game. The Dublin Rape Crisis Centre have also called in a boycott of all Conor McGregor products, which has been largely publicised throughout the Sunday newspapers and online. And there's actually, as we speak, there is a solidarity march for Nikita Hand taking place on Dublin City Centre on Dame Street, which is one of the main roads in Dublin City Centre.
So, and you're saying that's happening right now, or it's being planned for?
No, it was due to kick off at 6 o'clock today, as far as I've seen reports.
And as far as the media, 6 o'clock today, that is quite literally right now.
Yes.
It's 6:26. What about the media coverage?
The media coverage has been scathing of McGregor, to say the least. A lot of it is focused on the bravery of Nikita Hand, taking on this, a massively famous sports star. A lot of it is about, the verdict, the damages being settled on Thursday. Obviously, we have the court will sit again on Thursday to decide who is paying the fees here. It's a very confusing situation in that Conor McGregor has been found liable for assault, but the co-accused, James Lawrence, hasn't. And that's a very confusing situation for a lot of people, because in most of these cases, you will find that the person who loses is usually on the hook to pay the fees of the lawyers. But Hand's situation is unique in that she has... The jury has found McGregor liable, but not James Lawrence. So everybody very intrigued to see what happens on Thursday, including McGregor, who tweeted about this and later deleted it in pertaining to James Lawrence and his situation.
What do you think happened? I mean, I'm putting you on the spot here, but do you think he actually appeals? And if he does appeal, what is that process like? Because I know your system is different than ours, and I also want to say you are not a legal expert, so I'm putting you on the spot. But like, are we looking at another 3-4 years if this goes into appeal and the appeal is granted? How does this work?
As far as I know, I think a lot of people are looking at this appeal like it would be kind of a rematch of sorts. Like they just go back through the whole situation again. But my understanding is that it isn't that. You would have to have an objection to protocol, not, a legal protocol not being followed during this trial. And obviously, as we just said, I'm not a legal expert. I wouldn't be able to pinpoint anything like that. And also, the appeals can largely pertain to the amounts of money that are changing hands here. And in Hand's case, I think a lot of people, including Ben Folks and Chuck, who we talked on Friday, a lot of people were surprised that it was such a low number. I've since listened to Frank Graney, who was on with Luke Thomas, who's on with News Talk. He's one of the most revered court reporters in Ireland. He described that there's 4 different brackets in which the damages would have been broken down into general, special, aggravated and punitive. General would have been the 60,000. Special would have been the 188,000. We had testimony from people breaking down potential losses of earnings. Nikita Hand would have been subjected to. She had a budding career as a hairstylist. They kind of found the 180,000 in that category. They could have given more again for the aggravated damages, but they chose not to, and the punitive damages, which could have been a lot more money, but the jury chose not to go down that road.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you that. Like, I don't even, how do they even come up with such a number, as opposed to the number that they're seeking? Like, what is the calculation there? How do they even do that? What's the calculus?
Well, it is based on these 4 divisions, as far as I know. The general would have been focused on, and this is according to Frank Graney, this is not my own intel. The general would have been just about the trauma, the mental anguish, the situation she was put in, being a subject to a lot of publicity. The special would have been more to do with the amount of money she was missing. She said she couldn't go back to work, and again, we heard testimony about this. The aggravated I heard was to do with, like, if the person has been found liable, like, are they apologetic? Words like re-victimization were used, publicity, which all seem to kind of fit in to what we saw over the last 3 weeks with Nikita Hand and Conor McGregor, but they were not aware in that situation. Punitive, as far as Frank Graney has said, would have been to send a larger message, like, to society. Like, this cannot happen. We need to draw a line in the sand here. We need to show an extreme level of displeasure with this situation to do punitive damages. And that could have been a lot more money than Hand had originally looked for, which has been reported as 1.7 million in the aftermath of the case.
Like I said, I thought you and Chuck and Ben did a great job of not sort of comparing this to the Mike Tyson situation, especially since he's been in the news so much as of late in 2024. Who would have thought? What do you think happens? Let's presume he fights again in 2025, as Dana White says, back end of 2025. What do you think happens? What do you think the reception will be? Obviously, the fight won't be in Ireland. It will be, most likely in Las Vegas. But how do you think he will be covered, talked about, etc.? What does this do for him as far as being an athlete and somewhat of an ambassador of Irish sport?
I think it would probably be very badly received in Ireland, if I'm honest. But I do see support for McGregor. I mean, we'd be silly not to say, like, all of these tweets he put out were viewed by millions of people.
Yeah.
We've seen Andrew Tate and these guys come out and support him as well. So there is a strong support for him somewhere. I haven't noticed that much in Ireland, if I'm being particularly honest. And if you looked at the Sunday papers, you wouldn't have thought there was any. Even outside of the papers, Grip Media have been more sympathetic, I'd say, to McGregor during the case than a lot of the publications. But even their editor put out a piece today that said that regardless of how you feel about the outcome, McGregor has shown himself to be an awful human being during this court process. So, and that was one of the talking points in all the publications as well, how McGregor carried himself on the stand. People were mentioning, like, a kind of lewd comments, gestures with his hands, stuff like this. I don't think it would be received well in Ireland, but there's certainly still a fan base there for Conor McGregor. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and so let's see what happens. Let's see what happens with this protest that you're talking about. Let's see if, I feel like a lot of this is still up in the air, and the biggest question of all is, will he in fact appeal, right? Because if he does go through that, that's more time, that's more money being devoted to all of this, and that to me is the biggest indication as to whether or not he thinks that he is being falsely accused, and the verdict was incorrect. If he doesn't, then that kind of says it all, right? That kind of ends that. But it can't, by the way, go back to now. Here in America, if you're charged in a civil case, like the most famous one probably is O.J. Simpson, that was after his criminal case. It can't go back to criminal. I'd imagine that's the same thing in Ireland. Yes.
Absolutely. And everybody who was commenting on this talked about, like, the higher burden of proof it would have taken for the DPP to bring this to court. Obviously, one of the big arguments from McGregor's side of things was the inconsistencies in Nikita Hand's initial report, in contrast to what we saw on CCTV. There's also, a lot was made of her lying to her partner at the time. While she was there were several text messages sent to her partner at the time, saying she was fine, she wasn't under duress, anything like that. So that was a big part of their counter argument to Nikita Hand, and you could understand, based on what the jury saw, images of Nikita Hand, which she found very difficult to look at. She couldn't remember anything. She couldn't recognize the person she was watching, but essentially cozying up to James Lawrence, hugging McGregor before he left. You could imagine that with the DPP, when it's not on the balance of probabilities, which a civil case is, it's beyond reasonable doubt. Certainly, you'd imagine the DPP looking at footage like that and saying, this may present some doubt in this equation. But to Nikita Hand's credit, a lot, according to Frank Graney, a lot of people would have stopped their pursuit at that point, and had they gone the civil route, they would have been told that they will likely lose a lot of money going in this direction. But she kept on it, and that is really the narrative that's being forged in the newspapers and the mainstream media, that like this was exceptionally risky for her to go down. If she was simply looking to gain money from this situation, this would have been a terrible route to go. And yet she still went through with it, and she came out with with the jury deciding that McGregor was liable for assault on that night and James Lawrence was not.
It is, in retrospect, the fact that it went this far and ultimately that she, that the verdict was essentially in her favor. And again, I'm sorry if I'm not using the correct terminology here. It is crazy. Maybe crazy is not the right term, but like that that the DPP didn't even allow it to go to a criminal case. You know what I mean? That it never even got there, right? Didn't they just say there was not enough evidence and it kind of just ended there?
Yeah.
That's obviously a massive difference.
Yeah, it's I believe that the stat I read during this case is that only 14% of rape accusations brought to on Gardaí Síochána, the police in Ireland, are brought to criminal court by the DPP due to that high burden of proof. And in saying that, Frank Graney, this court reporter that I've heard speak a lot in the last days, and he's absolutely outstanding. He is a correspondent for News Talk. He said it was, in fact, quite rare for someone to go this way in a complaint like this, like Nikita Hans. So again, I assume that she would have been told on this journey that there's a strong likelihood that this does not go your way.
All right, so let's see what happens here. I wanted to bring in New York Rick, get his thoughts on all of this. We've had a chance to weigh in to some degree. Rick, as far as the future, like I asked PT that question when he fights again, for the greater MMA community, not just the Irish MMA community and Irish MMA fans, how do you think this will play out? How will he be received, in your opinion?
Yeah, I can't escape the feeling that this will color everything. Like, this feels like a demarcation, right? This feels like an event that cannot be removed, that will color all the conversation from now on. I wonder what his words are about this if he ever returns to fighting. I wonder what the UFC will say, if anything at all, about this. I imagine that the fans are wanting something to be said about this. One way or another, right? I don't think that necessarily the UFC it would be good business for them to necessarily condemn Conor McGregor, but you do wonder if they even have an opinion at all, if they even have a thought at all that somebody on their roster has now been found liable for something like this. You wonder what impact that will have. You wonder what impact that will have on sponsors. You wonder what impact that will have on the wider business, the combat sports business, how fighters are viewed. There are a lot of implications here that I think we're still fresh in this, and obviously Conor McGregor has expressed his intention to appeal this, and so this is not a completed story yet if he does follow through on that. But I think there will be ramifications and widely felt for this. I do wonder when we start to see and feel and hear these things. But I should obviously note, first and foremost, like, there are victims in this scenario, and that is the most important thing. But the future of Conor McGregor is something that we cover as a combat sports outlet, and that is where we're at.
I mean, this is unfortunately a type of story that we've seen quite often with the likes of Floyd Mayweather and Gervonta Davis, all different varying degrees. There's domestic violence, but these sort of uncomfortable conversations about fighters and about superstars, and then you wonder how they are going to be received, covered, whether the public will buy the tickets, buy the pay-per-views, all these things. So unfortunately, not the first time that we've been met with something like this. And Mike Tyson, probably the most famous example of them all. So let's see where it goes from here. I guess it continues to develop, even though a verdict was reached. And let's see if he does plan to appeal, and then where he goes from there, because that is going to be the next big domino, I presume, to fall. So that was the story that came out on Friday. Unfortunate news, to put it mildly, disturbing news. And honestly, when you read some of the details, from her testimony in particular, it's disturbing. It's not a great listen. It's a very uncomfortable and just disgusting stuff that you wish no one was subjected to. So very unfortunate, but again, great job by Petesy and the team, and him in particular, covering it all. Thanks for watching this video. Hey, before you go, do me a favor, hit that sub button, give us a thumbs up, hit the little bell thingy as well, leave us a nice comment or two. We appreciate you all very much.